Hey guys, tonight we're heading into the whispering sands and star-scattered skies of the ancient silk routes, a place where caravans creak through moonlit dunes, and you're just as likely to trade silk as you are apricots, eyeliner, or pillows stuffed with feathers from 5 different empires. You'll start this journey on foot, your boots already full of sand, as a caravan bells its way eastward. You're at the edge of a sea of dust, camels blinking slowly under heavy loads, their breath steaming slightly in the cool desert twilight. A trader beside you mumbles to himself, double-checking that his prized spice bundle hasn't been swapped for something less pungent. You probably won't survive this trip without developing a strong opinion about cumin. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, where in the world are you watching from tonight? Drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing how far our little bedtime caravan stretches. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're not leading the caravan, of course. You're the newest hire, somewhere between apprentice and liability. Your job? Walk near the back, don't lose the pack donkey, and keep an eye out for bandits, or worse, carpet salesmen trying to swap your shoes for a real antique. The desert wind picks up, combing through your cloak with sandy fingers. Ahead, the sun sinks like a golden coin into the dunes, and the bells on the lead camel jingle lazily. You'd romanticize this more if your last meal weren't 3 dried apricot halves and something called caravan bread, which historians agree was edible mostly in theory. The silk routes aren't one road, really. They're a braided mess of trade paths, cultural alleyways, and economic detours stretching from China to the Mediterranean. And you're right in the middle of one, somewhere near Merv or maybe Bactria, depending on whose map you trust. Spoiler, none of them are good at drawing rivers, and one has a sketch of a suspiciously large hedgehog labeled possible demon. Still, there's something comforting about the rhythm of travel. Step, bell, wind. Step. Your caravan mates mumble in a blend of Sogdian, Persian, and something else you're pretty sure is just singing to the camels. The sky turns lavender. Campfires begin to flicker like earthbound stars. A pot of lentils gurgles over flame, smelling faintly of cloves and very faintly of disappointment. Historians still argue whether most travelers along the Silk routes ever went the full length, from China to Rome, or whether it was always more of a pass-the-parcel situation. You know one thing for sure. You are definitely not walking to Rome. Not in these sandals.
Someone hands you a bundle to tie down for the night. You glance inside. Bolts of deep blue fabric. Maybe indigo dyed in India. Maybe faked in a rush job behind a Turkish bathhouse. It's soft though, silky even. And that's what people pay for. Not the real stuff always, but the feel. The dream of it. Trade, it turns out, is mostly about pretending you're not tired of apricots, and pretending this piece of cloth is woven by fairy hands. You roll out your sleeping mat under the stars. One of the older merchants is telling a story about a haunted pillow that whispered Mongol war secrets. Another is arguing over whether the best almonds come from Kashgar or somewhere your uncle's uncle dreamed about once. You close your eyes. The sand is surprisingly soft. The world smells like old leather, cumin, and dried fruit. Far away, a jackal howls. The camels grunt their displeasure. Someone mutters that it's probably just another trader trying to sell musical instruments, disguised as soup spoons. Welcome to the Silk Routes, where everything, your boots, your dreams, even your sleep, is up for trade. By sunrise, you regret everything. The air is dry enough to chap your thoughts. Your tongue feels like old parchment, and that caravan bread you nibbled last night has expanded into a personal brick of regret. The camels, however, seem smugly hydrated, chewing like sages who know secrets you don't. You trudge alongside the convoy again, this time ankle deep in morning chill. The sand crunches underfoot, still clinging to the last of the night's cool breath. The caravan master shouts in a mix of Chinese and grumbles, waving at someone to double-check the load of silk. Those sacred, shiny bolts that made this entire route worth building in the first place. Silk is the diva of commodities. Fragile, temperamental, but too beautiful to ignore. According to most records, it all started in China, probably around 2700 BCE, when a legendary empress named Leizu supposedly discovered silkworms while sipping tea under a mulberry tree. You've probably heard the story. Cocoon falls into her cup, unravels, and boom, silk. Fast forward a few millennia, and here you are, sweating beside a crate stuffed with what might be authentic Chinese silk, or very determined linen. Historians still argue whether silk ever truly lost its mystique, or if merchants just got better at faking it. You peer at a bolt of emerald green cloth, smooth as water on glass. Is it real? The merchant holding it shrugs with a look that says, "Who needs authenticity when you've got flair?"
Here's the thing about Silk Route travel no one advertises. It's sticky and sweaty and deeply unglamorous. You'd expect grand palaces, gold coins, exotic music. What you get is a never-ending loop of trudging, blinking into sun, adjusting your scarf to keep the grit out of your teeth, and awkwardly bonding with strangers over mutual ankle blisters. Still, there's magic in the monotony. You start to notice patterns. How every time you pass a hilltop shrine, someone leaves behind a coin. How each trader hums under their breath when tightening straps. And how the camel named Zuzu keeps choosing to sit directly on your pack at rest stops. You're not mad, just emotionally exhausted. You find yourself walking beside an older woman who trades in dyes, lapis, madder root, crushed insects, and powders that would stain your skin until next winter. She lets you carry one jar, warning that if you spill it, your hands will turn a color she only calls merchant's shame. You don't spill it, mostly because you're terrified. People think we travel for silk, she says, but it's the gossip we sell best. And sure enough, by that evening, someone's retelling a story about a Roman diplomat who mistook dyed parchment for royal cloth, paid triple, and tried to wear it to a dinner party. At the next watering station, you watch a small exchange. A bolt of silk for a pouch of dried apricots, plus a wink. The caravan master eyes the apricots like a jeweler assessing diamonds. You don't say anything, but you remember the fuzz on their skin, the golden orange glow in the sunlight, and how ridiculously expensive they were back in that Persian border town. Apparently on this route, the best way to make a fortune isn't with silk, it's with snacks. This fact becomes painfully clear when you realize someone in the group, probably that chatty boy with the parrot, has been hoarding his apricot stash, offering slices in exchange for silk trimmings, beads, or in your case, the last of your goat cheese. You trade. It's worth it. Quirky detail? Some caravans even carried entire beehives just for trading honey. And while historians debate how often the bees actually survive the journey, you can't help picturing a camel with a little hive hanging from its saddle, buzzing like a tiny orchestra of chaos. By nightfall, your feet feel like antique tiles. The stars come out bright and merciless. You lie beside your pack, stomach full of apricot and regret. Someone nearby is telling a story about a silk weaver who once wove a map into a scarf, secret roots stitched between the patterns. You're not sure if it's true. You're too sleepy to care. As you drift off, you clutch a corner of the silk bolt you've been guarding all day. It feels cool, slippery, like holding part of a breeze. Not bad for something made by worms and myth. Morning arrives with a breeze that tastes faintly of cinnamon and dust. You blink awake beneath a woven blanket that smells like camel and last night's lentil stew. Somewhere nearby, a bird screeches with inappropriate enthusiasm, and someone else, probably the parrot boy again, is already bartering for breakfast using a single gold button and half a fig. You stretch. Your knees crack, like ancient scrolls being unrolled. The caravan is stirring, a chorus of yawns and grunts, fabric flapping, saddles creaking. A young Sogdian trader is brushing sand off his lap with something that looks suspiciously like a decorative fan. "From Samarkand," he says proudly, though it clearly says "made in Alexandria" in faded paint. Today's route follows the edge of a river that may or may not exist. Maps in this era are more aspirational than accurate.
Historians still argue whether some of the tributaries shown on these early maps were real waterways or just spilled ink no one wanted to admit to. Either way, you follow the mirage-like shimmer of imagined water, trusting the camels to know the way better than any human. This leg of the journey is heavier with goods, silk, of course, but also lacquerware, perfume sealed in clay, and several crates of pillows, stuffed with down feathers and mystery. You overhear two merchants arguing about a shipment of pillows that were supposedly blessed by a poet priest in Bukhara. They swear the feathers are enchanted for deeper dreams, though you strongly suspect it's just very fancy marketing. As you walk, your neighbor, a compact, sun-wrinkled man with a collection of bells tied to his belt, begins telling you about the unofficial pillow games once held at rest stops. Apparently it was tradition, when waiting for horses to cool or merchants to haggle themselves into circles, to challenge someone to a pillow fight of honor. Not with violence, of course, just precision. First to knock off the other's turban wins. Loser has to tell a story or trade snacks. You vow to challenge someone soon, but only if your turban's extra tight. Midday brings a surprise, a small oasis town where everything smells like saffron and sesame. The town square has one lopsided fountain, two very ambitious pigeons, and a dozen stalls selling food, fabric, and something called desert ice. You try it. It's coldish goat milk, whipped with honey and tamarind, served in a ceramic bowl that doubles as a souvenir. It's better than the bread. As you lounge under a fig tree, a storyteller begins spinning a tale for the local children. He speaks a mix of Arabic and Persian, but the rhythm and the wide-eyed gasps of the kids translate the gist. It's a myth about the origin of silk, that the threads were stolen by a mischievous desert fox who wanted to weave a ladder to the moon. Spoiler, the fox gets distracted by apricots halfway through and sells the ladder for some magical slippers. Historians would scoff, of course, but you're not a historian right now. You're sun-dappled, sticky with tamarind, and perfectly happy imagining foxes peddling slippers beneath the stars.
You linger in the market eyeing brass trinkets and embroidered satchels until the caravan whistles call you back. As you rejoin the group, you notice a new merchant has joined, a tall woman wearing robes dyed in impossible blues and carrying something wrapped in silk. She doesn't speak, just nods at you once with a knowing smile. Later, you'll learn she's a feather merchant and that she once rode from Antioch to Dunlong on a dare. That evening, your camp settles near a salt flat that gleams like shattered mirrors under the moonlight. Someone starts a fire with dried dung and a surprising number of pine cones. The pillow merchant, clearly feeling festive, organizes a sleepy round of the famous pillow challenge. You're called up. Your turban is slightly crooked. You accept anyway. You lose in 2 seconds. You offer a story in return. Something about how you once tried to sell fake apricots to a Persian noblewoman and accidentally became her pen pal. The group laughs. Even the camels seem amused. You fall asleep beside your slightly dented pillow, smiling to yourself. You may be sore, you may be dusty, but today you traded stories and survived a pillow duel on the silk routes. That's more than most travelers can say. You wake to the scent of cardamom riding on the early wind. Someone is boiling tea over a low fire, its steam curling like a silk ribbon into the pale blue morning. Your breath fogs a little too. It's cooler now, highlands creeping into the route. The caravan is quieter than usual, not tired, just reverent. Ahead lies a stretch known among traders as the Whispering Valley, where voices carry strangely far and echoes play tricks on your mind. As you wrap your scarf and nudge your sore feet into motion, you fall into step with the feather merchant. She walks like someone who's always just returned from somewhere. You ask her what she's carrying in the silk bundle. "Goose down," she says, "but not from any old goose." Her eyes crinkle. Royal Hungarian geese, spoiled birds, fed grapes, massaged daily. You assume she's joking. You learn later she absolutely is not. There's a kind of magic in these exaggerations. The longer you walk, the more the caravan's rhythm lulls you into accepting everything as both slightly mythical and totally mundane. That trader from Taxila says he once crossed the Himalayas with nothing but a flute and a sense of direction. The cook swears the apricots from a certain orchard in Khotan restore memory. You can't tell if it's true. You also can't remember where you put your extra socks, so maybe it's worth testing. The main attraction of the day, however, is not fruit or feathers. It's paper. Yes, paper. The thin, miraculous stuff made from pounded mulberry bark, rice husk, or linen scraps, depending on who you ask. Paper is new-ish here, brought west by Chinese craftsmen who guard its secrets like dragons hoarding gold. Everyone wants it. Scholars, poets, traders, dreamers, especially dreamers.
You find yourself beside a younger traveler, barely 16 maybe, clutching a rolled scroll to his chest like it might explode. He says he's taking it to Baghdad, where a Kalis library is rumored to accept any written idea, no matter how strange, as long as it's well written. His scroll? A treatise on dream rituals and the benefits of afternoon napping. You silently wish him Godspeed. Historians still debate whether these stories of traveling dream theorists were embellished by later writers. But written or real, it's clear. The silk routes moved more than goods. They moved moods. You pass a fork in the road, one branch curling toward the mountains, the other stretching into flat plains bristling with wild barley. The caravan pauses to argue. The flat path is quicker, the high path offers better water. Eventually the camels vote by stubbornly turning uphill. Democracy, it seems, is camel-shaped. The climb is slow. Dust turns to gravel, then to rock. You stumble often, helped up once by a trader with hand-stained indigo from handling dye stuffs. The color sticks for months, he tells you. Once I turned a whole pool blue. You ask if he means by accident. He gives you a long look. Mostly. At midday, the caravan crests a ridge. Below, a lake glistens like melted sapphire. You eat near its shore, sipping goat yogurt and watching birds wheel overhead. The feather merchant murmurs their names like a spell. Hoopoe, crane, bittern. She tears a scrap from a discarded silk wrapper and begins to fold it, fingers nimble. You watch as it becomes a small bird. It flies if the wind is kind, she says, and sets it adrift. It doesn't. You both pretend not to notice. Later that evening, a group of travelers gather around to test out the luxurious pillows in her shipment. Someone suggests a sleep contest. Whoever falls asleep first wins. You lie down, still full from flatbread and apricot paste, surrounded by laughter, the chirp of insects, and the occasional honk from an indignant goose still tied to one of the supply carts. You're not sure who wins, but you dream of birds folded from silk drifting weightlessly above the whispering valley, and a page covered in tiny script that reads, "The route to sleep begins with stories carried on the wind." You're jolted awake by a sound you can't place, something like a donkey sneezing through a flute. Turns out it's a flute. Sort of. A reed instrument, called a ney, played by a one-eyed musician riding sideways on a donkey, just ahead of the caravan. You ask if this is normal. A man chewing pistachios shrugs. He's part of the entertainment package, he says. You decide not to ask follow-up questions. The morning rolls in warm and golden, with a breeze that smells faintly of roasted wheat and camel sweat. You cross into territory that You pass a ruined watchtower. Its stones laced with faded red script. Maybe Persian, maybe just an early form of graffiti. Historians still argue whether the tower belonged to a forgotten kingdom or was just a tax checkpoint with ambition. Beside the path, you notice clusters of squat plants dotted with golden orange fruit. They look like tiny suns. An old woman from the caravan nudges you and says, "Apricots. Careful, they make the world taste sweeter for days." You try one. She's not wrong. Here's the thing about apricots. They're not from one place. They traveled, like the people, like the stories. Some say they came from China, others from Armenia or even the mountains of Central Asia. Along the silk routes, they're as common as gossip and more beloved than most kings. A bowl of dried apricots can buy you a camel, or a kiss, depending on the town. You stop in a small village where apricots are currency and bread is braided like rope. Children run barefoot, smearing their faces with the juice of the freshest harvest. One insists on giving you a fruit in exchange for a joke. You tell them the one about the Sogdian who tried to trade fake silk for a real wife and ended up married to a donkey. They roar with laughter, possibly at your accent. Midway through the village, you hear shouting, not alarm, but excitement. A man in a long robe is trying to balance a stack of parchment scrolls on his head while demonstrating how to sleep properly using a pillow that folds like origami. You pause. Of course you do. Who wouldn't? His sales pitch is exquisite. No more neck aches. Sleep like a Shah. Approved by 4 out of 5 traveling monks. He even offers a free demonstration where he lies down mid-sentence and begins snoring convincingly. You end up buying one, if only for the performance. Lunch is a festival of leftovers. Dried lentils softened with water, apricot jam on stale bread, and something the feather merchant calls sleeper's stew, mostly onions and dreams. You eat while someone recites poetry in a language you almost recognize. The rhythm is soothing, like waves on sand. As the caravan prepares to leave, a light rain begins to fall, just enough to kick up the scent of earth and memory. You wrap yourself in your new purchase, yes, the folding pillow doubles as a head wrap in emergencies, and follow the path as it bends north. Evening brings the most curious sight yet. A stone well said to be haunted by a trader who once fell in while chasing a particularly alluring silkworm. The locals built a shrine beside it, not for worship, but to leave tiny offerings, strips of cloth, apricot pits, the occasional poem on paper. You read one. It's written in a shaky hand.
He's nervous, worried the parchment will crumple, that Baghdad won't be what he imagined. You tell him that even if the city turns out to be a dream, dreams still count. He doesn't smile, but his breathing slows. You roll onto your back and stare at the stars. There are so many tonight, they blur at the edges. You wonder who else is looking up at them. From another caravan, another bedroll, another quiet campfire wrapped in apricot perfume. Somewhere the flute plays again, slightly off-key, comfortingly so.
Your first thought as you stir awake is, did someone perfume the air with bread? Turns out, yes they did. You're camped just outside a cluster of stone huts famous for their sourdough, a legacy, you're told, of migrating Greek bakers who got lost 2 centuries ago and decided this was as good a place as any to raise yeast. Their starter, the village baker brags, is older than most dynasties. You shuffle into the queue, eyes crusted, breath fogging, scarf still tangled in your pillow. The man ahead of you is trading a sketch of a cat for a hot loaf. The woman behind you offers a pinch of saffron. You find a few dried apricots in your satchel. It's enough. The baker raises a brow, winks, and slides you a loaf still humming with heat. As you chew, slowly, like the bread deserves, a man approaches with what looks like a turtle wearing a tiny curtain. It's a toy theater, he says. He opens it and begins a puppet show right there, narrating a well-loved Silk Road fable, The Dispute of the 4 Pillows. You listen, drowsy and warm. The story goes like this. A merchant loses his 4 prized pillows in a dice game. Later, the pillows appear in 4 different cities, each gaining fame for the luxurious sleep they offer. One is used in a royal nursery, another in a temple, a third in a traveling inn. The 4th, rumored to whisper dreams in 5 languages. Years later, the merchant, older, poorer, still pillowless, visits each city in search of sleep, only to realize he's remembered them better than they ever were. The best pillow, the puppet narrator says, was the one he imagined. You're not crying, that's just sourdough steam. By midday, you're back on the path, the sky stretching blue and empty overhead. A traveling scribe walks beside you, ink-stained fingers tucked into his sleeves. He's been hired by a wealthy grain trader to write letters home. Mostly about the weather, he says, and his bowel habits. You ask what else he writes. He shrugs. Haikus, lists of birds, bad puns in 4 alphabets. You like him instantly. The caravan reaches a quiet shrine just off the trail. No idols, no priests, just a ring of stones and a small bowl of sand where travelers press thumbprints. It's a prayer for safe sleep, supposedly blessed by a goddess of dreams who once traveled disguised as a pillow merchant. She traded dreams for almond.
Historians still debate whether this dream goddess myth originated in Sogdian folklore or was cobbled together from 3 mistranslated scrolls and a drunk poet. Either way, the thumbprint ritual is oddly comforting. You press yours into the sand and whisper a wish you won't remember later. Evening settles in with a coppery glow. You camp near a dried-up riverbed where fossilized fish shimmer underfoot. The air carries a peculiar scent. Vanilla? No, something smokier. It's from a nearby fire where an elderly trader is roasting a mixture of spices. "For my dream cakes," she says, handing out slivers to anyone still awake. You bite into one. It's sweet with a peppery backbite, like someone baked a lullaby but forgot to leave out the sass. The dream cakes, she claims, were inspired by a recipe found on a half-burnt scroll in a ruined kitchen once run by court chefs in Bactria. She may be lying. You sincerely hope she's not. Later, a few of you lie back on woven mats and play a strange game, naming the most ridiculous item someone's tried to trade on the silk routes. Contenders include a petrified lizard wearing earrings, a map of Atlantis drawn on goat skin, and a melon that allegedly sang lullabies when sliced. You're sure the last one is a joke. The storyteller insists it hummed in F-sharp. That night, as the fire dies down, the scribe begins sketching the caravan by moonlight. You see yourself in the drawing, wrapped in your scarf, mouth slightly open in sleep. He's drawn a small bird perched on your knee. "A dream courier," he says. "They carry the good ones forward." You nod, just once, then turn your face toward the stars. The road this morning is quiet. Too quiet, actually. The usual chatter of camel bells and sleepy humming is gone, replaced by the soft crunch of hooves over packed sand and the occasional sigh from a bored donkey. It's as if the whole caravan is in a collective food coma from last night's dream cakes. You shuffle beside a wool trader wearing shoes made of bark. He's humming a tune about wet socks and lost loves. The scribe from last night catches up and mutters, "It's the 5th version of that song. The original had fewer goats." You pass through a narrow gorge where the stone walls close in, carving long shadows that move like slow dancers. Every now and then, someone claps softly to hear the echo. It's not spooky, it's meditative, like walking inside a stretched-out flute. At one point, you come across a herd of goats standing completely still in the middle of the path, like statues. The shepherd shrugs and explains, "They saw the reflections in a puddle. They'll move when the sun does." Sure enough, after a minute, one goat blinks and the others resume walking like nothing happened. Sleepy goats. You relate. By midday, you reach a high outcropping that offers a view of 2 rivers converging below. A ribbon of silver splitting a rust-colored valley.
The guide announces with theatrical flourish, "Behold, the meeting point of silk, salt, and surprisingly bad poetry." He's not wrong. This valley was once a hub for traveling poets, who traded verses for food, shelter, or affection. Some were talented, others were enthusiastic. You visit a tiny roofless building with fragments of their work carved into the stone walls. One reads, "My pillow was flat, but your eyes were round and soft, like undercooked bread." You chuckle, but gently. It's not the worst haiku you've heard. Further down the path, the caravan passes an abandoned way station covered in ivy and bees. A woman named Cydia tells you it used to be run by a guild of pillow inspectors. Yes, really. Who ensured that no royal head ever rested on subpar stuffing. They rated pillows on softness, scent, and how well they matched the sleeper's dreams, she says. Historians still argue, she adds with a wink, whether this guild actually existed or if it was invented by pillow merchants looking to raise prices. Either way, the legend stuck. Cydia herself carries a pillow filled with crushed rose petals and goose feathers. "Smells like a nap in a garden," she says. You ask to try it. She lets you, but only for a minute.
By late afternoon, clouds gather like gossip above the hills. You pause to let the camels rest near a shrine built entirely from mismatched stones, each one bearing a tiny carved mark, like a signature or sigil. It's said the shrine was raised by a wandering stonemason who slept a full 12 hours each night and credited his craftsmanship to perfect dreams. He built while half asleep, a man tells you, and claimed the stones whispered instructions. You lean against one and swear you hear a hum. It might just be wind, or maybe a lullaby in sandstone. That evening, you arrive at a quiet village built into the side of a hill, where doors are made of old cartwheels and the houses have chimneys that exhale like sleepy whales. The villagers welcome the caravan with an odd custom, a friendly pillow fight tournament. That's right, pillows. There's a referee. There are rules. No swinging from the elbows, no stuffing sabotage. There's even a prize, a beautifully embroidered pillowcase, stitched with camels dancing in a circle. You join a match and last exactly 2 rounds before being lightly smacked by a child wearing a helmet made of melon rind. It's the most dignified defeat of your life. Dinner is warm yogurt soup and flatbread, slathered with honey and salt. You eat with a retired storyteller who used to perform only while standing on pillows. Made the story softer, he explains. You nod, like that makes perfect sense. As the stars come out, you lie on a mat with your folding pillow under your head and a stomach full of carbs.
You exhale. The road stretches ahead, but tonight, you're not worried about where it leads. You're exactly where you need to be. You wake to the low thrum of wind brushing over rooftops, the soft coo of pigeons, and the gentle thud of someone accidentally sitting on a cooking pot. The pillow fight village is stirring. You sit up, your hair stubbornly glued to one side of your head, like a confused sand dune. Breakfast is served in silence. Bowls of cracked barley, cinnamon milk, and dried figs too chewy to chew, but too sweet to abandon. A small child sits across from you, watching intently, as if trying to remember your face for a dream later. Before departing, the villagers offer each traveler a tiny gift. Something local, something odd. You receive a seed wrapped in silk. Plant it when you forget where you're going, they say cryptically. You're not sure if it's a proverb or just eccentric gardening advice. Back on the trail, the mood is slow and content. The path climbs a gentle slope, littered with old wagon wheels and broken sandals. A guide points out that centuries ago, this stretch was known as the Path of Forgotten Heels, a place so steep and bumpy that countless shoes, carts, and tempers were left behind. Historians still argue, he adds, whether this nickname was literal or a metaphor for spiritual struggle. You figure both are probably true. Mid-morning, you pause at a rest station, with a curious centerpiece. A giant clay head with its mouth open, full of rainwater. A carved plaque explains that this is the Yawning Guardian, left by travelers who believed that a good yawn could pass fatigue from one person to another. So they built a statue to yawn for them. You yawn just looking at it. Nearby, a scholar reads from an old travel diary, found in the base of a ceramic pillow. Yes, you heard that right, ceramic pillow. Popular in parts of China for centuries, they were said to help keep the head cool and the dreams vivid. The diary belongs to a teenage merchant's apprentice who, according to the scholar, hated camels, loved sour plums, and once tried to convince a Mongol warlord to invest in socks. You wander off mid-story to follow the scent of something toasty. A woman with a portable oven is selling sleep bread. Thin rounds of dough dusted with crushed date pits, sesame, and what she claims is powdered jasmine. She insists it improves dream quality and may cause slight floating sensations. You by who? As you walk and munch, the conversation among travelers turns to animals. Specifically, the animals that were best at napping. Camels get an honorable mention for their dramatic lounging. Cats are celebrated across cultures. But the winner, by general consensus, is a bird found in the steppes of Central Asia that allegedly naps mid-air while gliding. The bird may or may not exist. Someone claims they saw it once,
but it might have been a leaf. Later, the group stops at a way station where travelers tie small bundles to a wish tree. Scraps of fabric, tufts of wool, feathers, even a broken compass. You add the silk-wrapped seed you received earlier, just for now. Maybe you'll pick it up again someday when you remember where you're going. The rest of the afternoon passes in a drowsy rhythm, the shuffle of sand underfoot, the slow turning of caravan wheels, the occasional sleepy joke. At one point, someone begins reciting riddles supposedly written by a vizier who refused to speak unless it was in the form of a nap-themed brain teaser. You only get one right. It's about a mattress stuffed with tea leaves. As the sun drops, the caravan arrives at a fork in the road. One path leads to a larger city. The other veers off toward a quieter valley. Everyone hesitates. Then, without speaking, most of the group turns toward the valley. You follow without asking why. You descend into the valley at twilight, the air thick with the scent of sage and something sweet, maybe apricots or maybe just the memory of them. The road narrows, swallowed by soft hills that fold over each other like draped fabric, and for a moment, you can't tell if you're walking on stone or cloud. No one talks much now. Even the camels seem quieter, their usual snorts reduced to faint snuffles, as if the valley itself has lulled them into contemplative silence. You spot the first apricot tree near a bend in the road. It's wild, old, and bent, like an elderly storyteller who's just remembered the punchline. A few golden fruits hang stubbornly from the branches, despite it not being apricot season. You pluck one, take a bite, and immediately understand why the ancients went through the trouble of dragging these little golden orbs across continents. Sticky, tart, sun in fruit form. You pass dozens more trees, some wild, some clearly planted long ago in precise, curved rows. A traveling gardener explains these groves date back centuries, part of a larger system of fruit diplomacy. Merchants, monarchs, even poets traded apricot varieties like rare spices. In some kingdoms, offering a bowl of apricots was a declaration of peaceful intent. Historians still argue, the gardener notes, whether the apricot originated here or in China. Honestly, we're all just happy it exists. You agree through a mouthful of juicy pulp. The caravan stops for the night at an orchard guest house, a long, low structure made of sun-baked mud bricks and blue tile. The walls are painted with swirling vines, moons, and, oddly, pillowcases. A local explains that this was once a haven for traveling dreamers, people who followed the silk routes not to trade goods, but to collect stories, sleep patterns, and lullabies. They called themselves the Pillow Pilgrims. You think they sound like your kind of people. Inside, the guest house feels like it's been waiting for you. The ceilings are low, the lamps give a honey-colored glow, and every corner is piled with cushions of every imaginable fabric. One pillow is embroidered with an elephant reading a scroll. Another has tiny bells stitched to the edges, just enough to jingle when you roll over. Dinner is a sleepy affair. Apricot stew, rose petal rice, a drink called dream water made from barley, mint, and fermented date juice. You sip it and immediately forget the word for window for about 15 minutes. After the meal, an old woman in a cloak the color of burnt sugar calls the group to gather in the courtyard. She doesn't shout. She just starts singing softly, and people drift toward the sound like fish to a ripple. She tells the tale of a nomad queen who wore her dreams on her sleeves, literally. Each morning, a scribe would stitch the contents of her dreams into her clothing. Gold-winged goats, reverse rivers, whispering stars. She believed dreams were messages from faraway lands trying to get in touch. One night, the queen dreamt of an apricot orchard full of talking pillows. The next morning, she decreed that every traveler passing through her kingdom must sleep on a gifted pillow, just in case one of them had the same dream. They never did, but some said the pillows hummed when no one was looking. You lie back on your cushion, your belly full, the stars blinking like slow thoughts overhead. Someone begins to hum. Just one long note, like a violin remembering its first song. You start to drift.
You dream, perhaps, of apricot groves, soft valleys, and the softest of footsteps, trailing beside yours, barely there, but always keeping pace. You wake, slowly, the sky already painted in pastels, mauve, pearl, and something soft between blue and gold. The pillow beneath your head smells faintly of saffron and last night's story. You wonder, drowsily, whether dreams can leave fingerprints. No one rushes. The entire caravan seems to be moving in half time, like they're underwater, or underwater adjacent. A camel yawns audibly. You realize you've started measuring time by camel yawns. After a breakfast of spiced flatbread and a salty yogurt drink so thick it might qualify as a mood, you repack your things and shuffle out into the orchard again. This morning's path curls gently through the valley like a sleeping snake. No sharp turns, just a steady, drowsy drift. A local guide joins you, robes dusted with dried lavender. This valley, she says, was once known as the Valley.
The interpreters would sit in shaded rooms, drink quince tea, and think for a week before responding. One wall still bears graffiti from a frustrated traveler. "It's just a dream about soup. Why are you making it about my childhood?" You laugh quietly. It echoes too far and you stop. At midday, you reach a small encampment of traveling historians. Yes, apparently that's a thing. They're working on recreating a 12th century merchant tent, complete with decorative wind chimes and a fold-out writing desk. One of them, a young scholar covered in ink smudges, is writing about the silk route's role in spreading non-essential essentials. Things people didn't need to survive, but once they had them, couldn't live without. Silk, apricots, perfume paper, glass beads, feather fans. Whispered lullabies translated into 3 languages. Pillows too, she adds, holding up a catalog of medieval pillow customs. You never knew such a catalog existed, but somehow you're not surprised. Historians still argue, she says with a sigh, whether the spread of luxury was corrupting or creative. I say, depends on the pillow. As you leave the encampment, another traveler joins you, a man with a pack full of bells and bread crusts. He tells you that in the time of the Khans, there were dream traders, people who carried not goods, but stories of dreams between villages. Some said they made them up, others believe they collected real dreams in little bottles, sold them to whoever had the coin and the courage. He offers to sell you one. You decline, but he winks and hands you a tiny corked vial anyway. This one's about a cat who learns embroidery. Might come in handy. The afternoon slips by like honey on a warm plate. You pass ancient markers carved with sleeping faces, camel-shaped shadows, and once, a perfectly round stone that spins on its own when you whisper to it. You're told it only works if the whisper contains a half-truth. You try it. It wiggles. Maybe. Near sunset, you reach another camp, this one much larger, bustling, filled with music, fragrant smoke, and laughter. A pillow market is underway. Hundreds of stalls offer cushions of every color, texture, and supposed magical effect. Pillows to summon dreams, to silence anxiety, to bring rain, to attract goats for some reason. One merchant swears her wool-stuffed model once belonged to a prince who dreamed only in colors humans couldn't name. You choose a modest one, embroidered with soft spirals and stuffed with dried jasmine and sand. The merchant whispers, "This one remembers every dream it supports." You're not sure if that's comforting or terrifying. As night folds over the valley, music drifts up from the market. A gentle drumbeat, a plucked string, a voice
And as your eyes drift closed, you wonder, if the silk roots carried dreams as well as silks and apricots, where did they all end up? The morning greets you with a breeze that smells like cinnamon and sun-warmed fabric. The pillow beneath your head is slightly crumpled, as if it too had a busy night dreaming. You stretch, slow and lazy, like a cat who's just remembered its royalty. The pillow market is quiet now. The stalls closed up with soft cloth flaps, the scents of last night lingering in the dust. A rooster makes a half-hearted attempt to crow, thinks better of it, and settles back down beside a tangle of rugs. You continue your journey with the caravan, the path narrowing again and weaving between strange hills dotted with carved stones. Some are marked with ancient script, some with pictograms. One appears to be a monkey holding a scroll and frowning. A guide tells you this is the Valley of Disagreements. Not for battles or borders, but for debates, academic ones. It was once home to traveling schools where scholars from different parts of the world would meet, argue, and then nap under the same tree. The silk routes weren't just about trade, he explains. They were also the Wi-Fi of their time. You like that? One area is roped off, a sleep circle, where students of the old days would lie down in a formation, heads inward, feet outward, and dream simultaneously after eating a shared apricot tart. They believed that if enough minds shared the same spice, they'd dream the same thing. Did it work, you ask? The guide shrugs. Historians still argue about that. Further down the path, the hills smooth out into rolling dunes, and the wind picks up just enough to flap your scarf like it's trying to say something in semaphore. You pass a group of nomads carrying scrolls in leather tubes, each marked with symbols that look like tiny beds. These are dream registrars, and they've been mapping sleep stories for generations, especially those that seem to repeat or overlap across cultures. One woman shows you a scroll with diagrams that chart common dream motifs along trade routes. Flying goats in Samarkand, singing sand in Kashgar, boats full of kittens near Shiraz. It's strangely comforting. Lunch is held under a pomegranate tree whose shade is so thick it feels like you're dining indoors. A child offers you flatbread stuffed with something spicy and sweet, fig paste, mint, and crushed pistachios. It tastes like a lullaby hummed with your mouthful. In the quiet lull afterward, an elder begins to speak of the great pillow fight of Nishapur. It was, apparently, a real historical incident, an accidental feud sparked by a merchant selling counterfeit goose feather pillows to the wrong family. What began as a customer complaint turned into a full-blown pillow brawl in the town square, featuring hundreds of villagers and one mildly traumatized goat. The funny part, the elder says, chuckling, is that it ended with a marriage proposal.
You imagine the fight in slow motion, feathers everywhere, and two star-crossed lovers meeting under a downy explosion of accidental courtship. Maybe that's how love works in this world. Equal parts mistake and miracle. As the caravan continues into the afternoon, you cross a narrow stone bridge where people have tied bits of fabric, each embroidered with a dream they hope to have one day. You stop to tie your own scrap, a frayed bit of scarf. You don't write anything, just hold it, close your eyes, and wish for something soft. Later, a scholar in crimson robes tells you about the Apricot Treaty, a rarely mentioned pact between rival kingdoms who agreed to share knowledge on horticulture and pillow design in exchange for not invading each other's orchards. You almost choke on your dried fig. Pillow diplomacy was real, apparently, and apricot cultivation became a competitive art, with entire courts dedicated to improving sweetness, texture, and dream predictive potential. Yes, the scholar says quite seriously, some believed the perfect apricot could reveal the future in your sleep. You ask if anyone ever succeeded. He shrugs. Probably not. But have you tasted a ripe Kashgar apricot? That is the future. Evening arrives like a sigh. The wind settles. The camels start looking for excuses to lie down. You pass a field of discarded pillowcases, hung like prayer flags across a crumbled wall. Each one has a symbol stitched into it: a tiny bird, a closed eye, a spiral, a sleeping moon. These are dream relics left by travelers hoping their dreams will linger long after they've moved on. You leave one too. Nothing fancy, just a handkerchief tied to a stick. But it feels like part of something older than explanation. Night settles again, soft and full, and you lie back on your jasmine sand pillow, the stars blurry through your lashes. You wonder if somewhere along the silk roots there's a pillow waiting to finish a dream you started here. By now, waking feels optional. You lie there a little longer, letting the sounds of a slow morning drift into your awareness like tea steeping. Camel grunts, someone hammering something very gently, and a lute playing a scale so lazy it might be asleep between notes. You finally sit up. Your neck feels fantastic. You pat your pillow as if to thank it. Maybe you do. The day begins with a stop at a gathering of merchants who specialize not in goods but in transit entertainment. Riddles, lullabies, long jokes with disappointing punchlines, and illustrated dream manuals. You flip through one, page after page of symbolic creatures, color palettes, weather moods, and suggested interpretations. According to this book, dreaming of a flamingo wearing boots means you should avoid sour plums for 3 days. Useful. A storyteller begins a tale about a sleep thief, a mythical creature said to ride the silk routes at night, stealing the last 10 minutes of your dreams and hiding them under river stones. Apparently, if you ever wake up feeling like you almost had the answer to something, but not quite, you've been visited. You chuckle, but make a note to look at riverbeds more suspiciously. The caravan moves on through a narrow gorge, the cliffs close and tall, and the sky slivers of blue above. In places, inscriptions are carved into the walls, names, prayers, maybe just doodles of camels with great hair. You see one that reads, "I forgot what I came here for, but it feels like dreaming." Exactly. A short while later, the terrain opens into a wide plateau where travelers gather to share updates and gossip. One man spins a tale about a sleeping city that moves 1 inch a year, never waking, and occasionally trading embroidered silk for lullabies. Another insists there's a spring up north that only flows during naps. You realize the silk routes didn't just move spices and silk. They carried stories like pollen. Over lunch, you learn about the Festival of Sleep Positions, once held annually in a coastal town where travelers would demonstrate the most effective ways to sleep on cargo, camels, and uncomfortable friendship. Categories included Best Nap on Unstable Terrain and Most Dramatic Pre-Sleep Sigh. Winners were awarded apricot jam and goose feather fans. You try to imagine the closing ceremony. Lots of yawning, probably zero applause. The afternoon brings a detour to what was once a monastery, but not for monks. This one belonged to a guild of dream cartographers. Their goal? To map every reoccurring dream that appeared along the silk routes and chart possible causes. Inside, murals still cover the walls. Painted dreamscapes of floating marketplaces, rivers full of bells, clouds shaped like regrets. One corner depicts a man dreaming of himself, dreaming of a merchant selling pillows who is in turn dreaming of an apricot orchard. You stare at it for a while. It stares back.
A scroll on a pedestal reads, "To dream the same dream twice is a sign. To dream someone else's dream is a path." Historians still argue whether this was philosophy or a poetic form of plagiarism. By sunset, the wind changes, and with it the color of the land. The soil turns redder, the trees sparser, the stars more eager to appear. You climb a slight ridge to watch the horizon swallow the sun in one long gulp. At the top, a small pillow shrine awaits, stone benches and cushions tucked into alcoves, each embroidered with symbols of rest. Travelers sit, not speaking, just breathing. One man naps upright, hat over his face, a soft smile betraying something pleasant and possibly soup-related. A young girl sits next to you and offers a question instead of a greeting. "Do you think dreams travel faster than camels?" You say yes. She nods. "Me too." The stars arrive, big and unrushed.
The pillow beneath you sighs, or maybe you do. Either way, you stretch out again, belly full, brain soft, and eyes only half convinced of their purpose. Somewhere in the distance, a drum beat begins, a slow rhythm like a heartbeat tucked into a lullaby. And you know this night will be gentle. Because everything, apricots, stories, even that embroidered monkey from the gorge, is part of a bigger pattern. You just have to dream long enough to see it. The road hums beneath your feet now as if it's learned your rhythm. You no longer walk the silk routes. They seem to walk you. Every step feels like déjà vu wrapped in soft cotton. The day begins with a soft breakfast of rosewater rice and toasted flatbread, eaten in the shade of a crumbling fort that once housed pillow inspectors. Yes, pillow inspectors, appointed officials responsible for checking the fluff-to-feather ratio in cushions traded across regions. Feather fraud, they called it. A real issue, apparently. One inspector's journal found in the ruins described an infamous incident in 1348 where a shipment of swan down turned out to be stuffed with wool, sand, and a single shoe. He wrote, "I've never been so personally betrayed by upholstery. You chew your bread slowly, respectfully." The caravan's next destination is an oasis town with a curious reputation. Its residents claim to remember other people's dreams, not just vaguely, but with oddly precise details. One woman describes your recurring dream about chasing a plum through a library. You've never told anyone about that. She smiles and says, "You dropped your shoe, by the way." You don't ask how she knows. Further on, you pass through a grove of sleep trees. These aren't actual trees, but elaborate wooden sculptures made to resemble ones, built by a long-lost artisan guild. Travelers would rest under them, convinced they carried restful auras. One still stands with a cushion-shaped canopy and tiny bells that tinkle with every breeze.
A placard nearby reads, "Built to remind travelers that rest is part of the journey." A simple truth, though historians still argue whether the bells were for comfort or to ward off dream thieves. Later, in a shaded alley lined with silk banners, a merchant beckons you over, not with words, but with a yawn. He sells pre-dreamed pillows, each containing a small poem sewn into the lining. You choose one embroidered with tiny blue waves and a crescent moon. He tells you, "This one dreams of being the sea." You press your face to it briefly and swear it smells faintly of salt and soft regrets. By mid-afternoon, the air gets thick with heat and storytelling. You stop at a carpet bazaar where the rugs are said to record the dreams of those who nap on them. Some travelers swear they've woken with entire stories stitched into their minds, memories not their own. Others wake craving a very specific fruit that doesn't exist. You lie down briefly on one woven with stars and tigers and end up dreaming about falling into a bowl of chilled apricot soup. Comforting, but sticky. Nearby, an old woman spins tales of the Pillow Oracle, a legendary cushion said to whisper advice to those who sleep upon it during a full moon. According to her, it once advised a merchant to sell off all his silk and invest in dried cherries. He became very rich, or maybe just very lucky. Still, she says, handing you a slice of melon, wouldn't you listen to a pillow that talked? You would, obviously. As the sun begins to dip, the caravan crosses a low bridge where feathers drift lazily along the surface of a shallow stream. It's called the River of Slight Regrets, where travelers throw in feathers from old pillows to let go of what no longer serves them. Failed business deals, snoring husbands, dreams that never quite made sense. You add a feather, watch it swirl downstream, then vanish into the twilight. At camp, the fire is already crackling, the kind of slow, popping flame that sounds like it's reading bedtime stories to itself. Someone's boiling tea, scented with saffron and lemon peel, and laughter floats like smoke through the encampment. A musician begins a low, rhythmic tune on a ney flute. Its notes rise and fall like breathing. You settle down, pillow cradling your head like a hand that knows you well. Around you, murmured stories blend with the sound of flickering fire. Someone jokes that if you fall asleep now, you might dream of camels doing taxes. Another says he once dreamed of a date palm that argued with him about fashion. You smile, close your eyes. Let the lull of the silk roots remind you that this isn't just a journey of distance, but of softness, warmth,
and surrender. Even the stars tonight look half asleep. By now, waking and dreaming feel like neighbors. Close, but not always on speaking terms. The morning arrives in whispers. A breeze lifts the edge of your blanket. Someone's grinding spices nearby. You stretch beneath a sky so pale it seems undecided. Today's leg of the journey leads you to a forgotten trail. Once part of the silk routes, now a quiet detour, only known by word of mouth and extremely well-traveled cats. They say this path was used exclusively for transporting luxury items too fragile for camel caravans, like eggs, perfume, and diplomatic sleep masks. The trail is marked by tiny stone towers, each no taller than your knee. They're believed to have been set there by a sleep cult who practiced dream fasting, staying awake for days to receive visions. Ironically, most of their diaries are full of vivid hallucinations about cake. Scholars still argue whether these visions were spiritual awakenings or just intense hunger with plot twists. At midday, you reach a trading station that once specialized in dream tokens. These were little charms people carried. Scraps of silk, dried apricot seeds, tiny etched stones, each meant to encourage specific types of dreams. A red thread might prompt romantic dreams. A pebble shaped like a fish could inspire adventure. A whiff of cinnamon might nudge you toward nostalgic memories of that time you wore sandals in the rain and pretended it was intentional. You pick up a charm shaped like a crescent moon with 2 dots. The merchant grins. That one's for dreams where you find something you didn't know you lost. Intriguing. Lunch is served in a shaded garden full of sleepy bees. The hosts offer you rice sweetened with dried apricots and milk, dusted with something floral. You eat slowly, the spoon feeling like a lullaby in your hand. A cat naps across your feet and refuses to move. You decide it's a sign to take your time. Conversation drifts to dreams again, specifically how different cultures along the Silk routes recorded them. One traveler tells of a town that painted its most popular dreams on public walls each season. Another shares that in his homeland, dreams were mailed anonymously to a central archive where monks try to decode national moods. Imagine sorting through thousands of dreams just to conclude, everyone really misses figs. You move on, now walking along a sun-dappled path flanked by almond trees. Here, an abandoned pavilion sits, rumored to be the final stop of a pillow pilgrimage, once made by those seeking the nap.
Unfortunately, the cushion is long gone. All that remains is a small indentation in the floor and the faint scent of cardamom. You sit anyway, not to seek enlightenment, just to rest. Later in the day, you arrive at the edge of an ancient city, long buried beneath sand, recently uncovered. The only structure still standing is a pillow library. Stone shelves, still holding bundles of fabric, each labeled with the name of its owner and a short line about the dreams they recorded. One says, Jabir, dreamed often of rain that sings. Another, Farah, dreamed of climbing up and up with no end. And one simply reads, You. You blink, then smile. A coincidence. Probably. As evening settles, the caravan reaches the outskirts of a bustling town known for its evening exchanges. Every twilight, travelers gather in the square to trade stories, laughter, soft fabrics, and occasionally, dreams. You hear a tale of someone who once dreamed an entire new alphabet and woke fluent in a language that didn't exist. Another traveler offers you a gift, a small sachet filled with dried petals and a riddle. It says, What is the shape of rest? It has no corners and always fits. You hold it close. You'll dream on it later. The stars blink back into view as fires are lit,
casting soft gold onto faces and silk. A distant drum begins again, the same steady beat you've heard before, or maybe imagined. The pillow beneath you smells like saffron, and the wind hums like it knows a secret. And somewhere, on the silk roots still winding through story and time, a merchant sets out with nothing but apricots and lullabies. The final stretch of your journey begins with a sound that isn't quite a bell and not quite a breeze. It might be both, or maybe it's just the echo of a yawn stretching across centuries. You rise slowly, your limbs soft from sleep and repetition. The path ahead is smooth, worn down by the passage of countless feet, and hooves, and paws, and wheels that squeaked before oil was invented. You're walking now through a stretch of land known in old caravan notes as the Gentle Miles. No steep climbs, no sharp stones, just soft sand, low grasses, and the sense that even the air here has taken a vow of kindness. Alongside you, a small child appears out of nowhere and walks in silence for some time, dragging a ribbon through the dust. She finally turns and says, "Do you ever dream about being someone else? Like a lighthouse? Or a piece of fruit?" You nod, because the answer is clearly yes. Then she vanishes, or maybe she was never there. In the distance, you see a domed building shaped like a teapot. You blink, it stays. As you get closer, you realize it's a traveler's rest, built by an eccentric patron who believed sleep and tea were holy twins. Inside, the ceilings are covered in sleepy-eyed mosaics, and low couches line the walls, each with its own embroidered throw that seems to sigh when you touch it. The innkeeper, an older man with a pillow strapped to his back like a turtle shell, serves you spiced milk and says nothing, just nods. His parrot says, "You look like you need a nap." You don't argue. You sit and drink and listen. Someone's telling a story in the corner, something about a sultan who ruled from a bed, issuing royal decrees between naps. His empire fell eventually, not from invasion, but because everyone got too relaxed to care about borders. Historians still argue whether this was a failure or the ultimate success. As you step back outside, a camel walks past wearing a hat. No one seems surprised. The sky begins to blur into watercolor, peach, then lavender, then a soft smudge of midnight blue. Fireflies blink on, slowly, like shy stars rehearsing. You follow the soft curve of the road until you reach the end, not of the journey, but of the known route. Here, a small wooden sign reads simply, "You made it. Rest well." It's nailed to a tree that leans like it's tired too. There's a final stop, a silk tent, open on all sides, filled with cushions in every shape and scent. Some are stuffed with lavender, others with dried petals or tiny scrolls of poetry no longer legible but still comforting. You lie back. Your last thought before sleep arrives is simple. The silk routes weren't just about trade or power or conquest. They were about texture, softness exchanged as a gift. A world carried not in coins, but in dreams. And now, as your breath slows, you feel yourself melt into the very fabric of the journey. Part apricot, part sandalwood, part starlight. Just one more traveler on the long, soft road home. Wind down. The stars above are steady now, like kind eyes watching you breathe. The fires are out, the silk banners tucked away, the market stalls folded like dreams back into their baskets. Your body is still, your mind floats. And around you, the silk routes quiet themselves into a lullaby made of footfalls, wind through tents, and the gentle sigh of history falling asleep. There's no need to hold anything anymore. Let go of the apricots, the pillow fights, the caravan songs. Let them drift backward, like feathers on the river of slight regrets.
You've made it to the softest part of the night, where memory fades and comfort takes over. Let the sands be your blanket. Let the sky be your ceiling.
You're part of something bigger now. Something older, slower, sleepier. Let your thoughts stretch out, dissolve into colors you don't need to name. Let your breathing find its rhythm, easy and warm. You've walked far enough. You've heard enough. You've earned the quiet. Now, just rest. Just rest. Just rest.